Right. Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm so glad to see you here virtually. Really great that you can make it. I know that you're busy teachers. We are probably the busiest of many different professions. So thank you for making time today for our first webinar for this course, Effective Teaching for Adult Educators. Let's get started right away. This is our agenda for today. So in this webinar today, we're going to explore what effective teaching looks like and take a closer look at the adult education teacher competencies. I believe Maria is going to link those in the chat, but they are also available for you in the course in Moodle. We're going to have kind of a broad overview of the 4 domains, but today we're really going to be focusing in on domain 2, which is about plans and delivers high quality evidence-based instruction. So we're going to, as we go forward, be thinking about and really examining how to apply all of these competencies into our own practice as adult educators. So by the end of today's session, you will be able to explain the background and rationale for the adult education teacher competencies. So we'll give some information about that. Describe the structure, purpose, and use of the competencies. So thank you. I've already seen a lot of you having some discussion in Moodle about that and questioning how it applies to different program areas. So hopefully we answered those questions, but feel free at any time today or in Moodle to ask questions as we continue through this course. You'll also be able to recognize performance indicators in practice, and you will create a sample illustration related to a specific program area. So these are our goals. And what I want to ask you next, because we're going to be going to breakout rooms in a moment, is to think about yourself as a professional in this beautiful career that we have teaching adults. So this is our warm-up activity, and we're going to give you some time to talk with some of your colleagues that are participating in this course. So as you see here, there are 4 actions or priorities related to teaching. I want you to, as I read through these, think about each one and consider which one really aligns with your ideas about what is important for us teachers working in adult education to do. So the first one you see there, letter A, to use assessment data to inform choices about instruction. So assessment, whenever you give a test or any sort of, check in with students and you collect data, whether that's hard data or just anecdotal observation data, how is that really important, do you think, to help you make choices going forward? Okay. B is, do you think this one really aligns with you as far as what you value and think is important in teaching adults? Developing your own knowledge of content, subject, and strong teaching skills. So we have a whole bunch of different teachers here. We have ESL teachers, we have ASE, ABE, we have CTE, we have adults with disabilities. So do you feel like that's the really most important thing, is knowing about your subject area and having the teaching skills to teach those particular adults? C is communicating high expectations to our learners and motivating them to persist in meeting their goals. So in other words, that you set the bar high, but that you also help your students by motivating them to reach the goals of the course, and to finish the course and finish all of the program, so that they can go on to the next thing in their lives, whether that's higher education or a job or just better life skills, right? And letter D is using instructional techniques that are effective with adult learners. So in a moment, we're going to be talking about how adults differ from kids, in the instructional techniques and many other factors. But do you think that that's the most important thing, how to teach adults? So look at those 4 and think again about which of these priorities aligns most closely to your ideas about instruction. There's no right or wrong, okay? Definitely not. And there's no judgments, of course, about whatever you choose. Okay, so give you a moment. And you're going to see these in the chat, kind of shortened versions, A, B, C, and D. And what we're going to do, okay, hopefully everybody's ready. What we're going to do is you will be joining a breakout room for about 10 minutes, and we'd like you to do this, okay? So again, the 4 priorities are listed in the chat, and maybe you want to jot down, which one most aligns with you. And we're going to ask you to do these things in your breakout room. To introduce yourself, okay, briefly, because we only have 10 minutes, and share which of the 4 teacher priorities you chose and why. And then give an example of how you demonstrate this in the classroom. Or we do have a lot of new teachers, or even I think about, maybe I have a priority that I'm not really doing well in my instruction, but I've maybe observed someone else along the way. So it could be also how you have seen this priority played out in the classroom. And then if the time is still going and everybody in your group has answered these questions, then also you're going to see 4 domains, and you're going to decide which domain, 1, 2, 3, or 4, do you think your choice represents. So I'll pause, see if there are any questions about the tasks for the breakout room. Is everybody ready? You can give me a thumb up, say yes, type yes in the chat. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Thumbs up. So Maria is going to be sending you will get like a countdown when we're getting close to the end. And I think this is a great opportunity for everybody to share, because we have many different levels of experience in program areas. So here we go, everyone.
Alrighty, thank you, Kristi. So I'm going to open those rooms. We'll have 3 rooms with 2 in each room. Opening them now.
Okay, well, thank you everybody for participating. Hopefully you got a chance to swap some great ideas with another participant of the course. And so these are the 4 domains. And so looking back at those questions, using assessment data, knowledge of content subject area, and strong teaching skills, communicating high expectations, and instructional techniques for adult learners. If you had a chance to think about which quality you selected as aligning with your views of what is really high quality education for adults, if you selected using assessment data, that really belongs to domain 1 that you can see here, monitoring and managing student learning and performance through data. If you selected the quality of having strong content knowledge of a subject area and teaching skills that complement that teaching area, that really goes with domain 4. Pursuing professionalism and continually building your content knowledge and skills, which you're here, building your skills. So you're fulfilling domain 4 already. Congratulations. If you selected communicating high expectations and motivating students to persist to meet their goals, you can see that that belongs under domain 3, effectively communicating to motivate and engage learners. And then you, the final choice was using instructional techniques that are effective specifically with adult learners more so than with K-12 children, right? That belongs to domain 2, plans and delivers high quality evidence-based instruction. You're going to get to know all of these 4 domains and all of the competencies within them. Most of them have 5 different competencies. And while you will likely more strongly identify with one domain over others, possibly, you will become knowledgeable in all 4 during the course of this training. So now that we've had a chance to connect online here, in real life with some of your fellow participants beyond Moodle, we're going to review some of the goals of this session. So a little bit about the adult education teacher competencies. They were linked in the chat, they're in Moodle, but we're going to talk a little bit broadly about their purpose and their foundation and where they came from. So I want to ask you this question. and reflect on this as we think of the word competencies. What do you think of when you hear the word competencies? Feel free to share in the chat or unmute yourself and just shout out any word or sentence that comes to mind.
Skills.
Skills. Excellent. Thank you. Anybody else?
Abilities.
Abilities. Right. Exactly. Anybody else have anything different? Well, you hit the nail on the head. Exactly. So this quote is from Dubois, and he provides this definition of competencies, especially as they apply to our profession, to what we do. Competencies are those characteristics, knowledge, skills, mindsets, thought patterns, and the like that when used, whether singularly or in various combinations, result in successful performance. So you said abilities and skills, but other things too, like maybe we don't always think about mindsets or thought patterns. And of course, knowledge, that's kind of a given, right? So yes, competencies. So a little bit about the competencies as the framework for the adult education teacher competencies. These competencies, this document was designed to help structure and organize the way that you think about your instructional practice and the various entry points for improvement. Some of us have been teaching for 20 plus years, and we have some folks in this course who are very new to adult education. So whether you're brand new or you've been teaching for 30 years, there's always room for improvement. And we can use these competencies to identify some areas of growth. Or if we're just starting the career, I wish I had had these when I was just starting, because I really could have used them to reflect on my own teaching. So the tables inside the document are intended as a tool to help you think about things like lesson planning, reflecting on your instruction, and identifying areas for improvement. And there was a question in Moodle about how can I identify what I need to work on? And I thank you. I can't remember who asked that question, but yes, that's going to be part of this course, is that you're going to use a tool to think about your own teaching and identify one area for improvement. So where did these competencies come from? Where did this framework, spring from? Why did we need this? Well, there have been several changes in adult education over the past decade or so that have made this framework necessary. One is, you see that blue document that is posted there. One change that came about is rigorous instruction, and that was a call that came to us through the release of the College and Career Readiness Standards for Adult Education. With those standards, we are now supposed to provide rigorous instruction as a major focus. The purpose is providing students with the skills they need for their futures. So instead of just lingering in our courses for years and years, as some love to do, right? That we are helping them get on a pathway, maybe for a career or for a better job. And we know that living where we do in this beautiful state of California, a living wage is not what it used to be, right? So helping them see beyond our classes, okay? And giving them the academic language and all that they need for that. Next is, we are aiming to ensure that students are academically prepared and have the skills they need for post-secondary education. I don't know about your students, but a lot of mine do have their high school diploma, but is that really enough to get a job that is going to sustain even an individual, let alone a family? So giving them the language and the academic preparation for whatever lies ahead. And typically it can be a short-term vocational program, but something that's going to help them, rise up, we could say. Next, we have career pathways. So we are also aiming to ensure that skills that we are teaching will help students be successful in the workplace, and that will facilitate their transition from our courses in adult education to the workplace through career pathways. This can be done by creating bridge courses, which I'm sure exist in many of your agencies. And those are courses where students learn the skills they need maybe for a specific career, or simply helping students connect with prospective employers. And finally, do we have to say much about technology? Technology is evolving at a faster pace than ever. So an important change that is happening second by second, we could say, is the ongoing evolution of technology. We need to help our students keep up so that there isn't a widening digital gap between our students and the rest of society. So we need to make sure they are not left behind with all of the developments in technology changes, right? So what are the 4 domains? There are, within these competencies, groupings of 4 large domains, which you saw. And the first one is monitor and manage student learning and performance through data. So think about that. What kind of data do you use to inform your instruction? Please feel free to share in the chat or shout out, unmute yourself, something that you use that whether it's just something you observe or it's numbers on paper that you use to decide what you're going to teach tomorrow and how you're going to do it. Anybody have an idea there?
I would say I use CASAS test scores.
Yeah.
Along with somebody else that they put in here. And each one of my individuals have my students have individual objectives that are written for each one that are written into their IPPs. So it's very individualized, and I use those based on more that I don't do a lot of assessment and tests because like we were Edun and I were, and our group we're talking about is we all work with special education and adults with disabilities. And because of that, they're varying days by day, they vary, whether they're medications, they're environmental. There's so many variables that change their data that can be looked at. So it's very hard to look at data with special education and adults with disabilities because of those different things. So that is one of my least ones that I use only because it doesn't have a lot of concrete base sometimes.
With your particular population of students.
Exactly.
Thank you. Yeah. So maybe like Karen said, just observations. If you're teaching some like adults with disabilities, teaching some particular life skill. One of my colleagues teaches adults with disabilities, and I went to her classroom once and a student came up and just interrupted, and she reinforced to him, when people are having a conversation, you wait for the right moment and then you teach that and you observe whether students are able to do that with repetition and ongoing instruction. Many of us use
where that's just my class.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Many of us maybe get at your school. If you don't, you should ask for it. Now in ESL and in ASE, we can get these really great reports with pie charts, and we can see a particular type of test question from the CASAS reports that students struggle with. For a lot of times when I look at it, it's not the skill that's lacking, but sometimes it's the content knowledge that's lacking. So I know that that might be a topic in the future that I bring up with my students. I love this, that Alicia says that she uses quarterly goals with her adults with disabilities, AAP, which I'm not familiar with. If you can share, Alicia, what that is. Of course, you have accommodation plans with adults with disabilities based on your students' needs. Yes, that's excellent.
The academic accommodation plan similar to the IEP or IPP, but because of community college, it went to AAP.
Okay, so
terminology.
Different acronym, similar idea. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so it can, be careful with the numbering. Oh yeah, I know. It's so, yes. So CASAS is not an end all, and we really are supposed to be using it as formative assessment, which we're going to be talking about. But I think most use it. Some schools, some teachers I know at other agencies, they get that CASAS test results way after they've made promotion, advancement sort of decisions with their students. So, if you can get that information before, that's much more useful, right? But if you give short quizzes or even gamification, having games in class where students are, doing retrieval practice and you're reinforcing the learning and you're just listening and you're seeing who is not getting it, right? That could be data. So the second domain is plan and deliver high quality evidence-based instruction. So this is focusing on how we teach our learners. And what does that look like? I mean, hopefully some of you had a conversation in the breakout room. Maybe a few of you selected this. But how do you, what is, like, if you were to walk by a classroom, another teacher's classroom, and just glance in, what would be something you would notice that looks like high quality evidence-based instruction?
Students are moving, they're talking, they're interactive.
Thank
It's
you.
not just one person standing at the front. There's interest, all of those things.
Engagement, Rebecca. And yeah, you said it. Some of us teach ESL, but I think for all of us, I teach in the evening and students are tired. Some of them have been up since 4 a.m. They barely see their families, making huge sacrifice. And if I'm just going to tell them to open their book and turn to page 4 and do it and then bring it up to my desk, no, they leave, so yeah, we need to look at research about what works well with adult learners because they are giving up a huge amount of their time and sacrificing a lot to be in our classes. So we'll be looking a little bit at that specifically today. And then next we have effectively communicate to motivate and engage learners to persist. So I don't know if your program keeps track of persistence. In mine, we do. And we pride ourselves on students starting and finishing. But when you have a class that is 30 students and it dwindles to 1, there's something not right there, right? So I think this has to do a lot with making connections with students right away, right? So I was in a different webinar a couple of weeks ago, and one of the instructors in the webinar said, oh, my students don't tell me anything. I don't know anything about them. They're very shy and quiet. And it made me a little sad because what a lonely place to be. But is there anything that comes to your mind when you look at that number 3, effectively communicate to motivate and engage learners? Maybe something you do, maybe a class activity, something that you start the course off with. Anybody would like to share for a moment or share in the chat? Yeah. I love that, Daniel. Connection before content every day. So a lot of classrooms I've visited, there is a daily check-in. Especially now, there's so much stress, and so, mental health problems are off the charts, especially for our adult learners, but for anyone, right? So having a check-in and making our classroom a safe space where mistakes are not just tolerated, but accepted, applauded, and making sure that students know that, and I love this, what you just put there, humor. And yes, exactly, encouraging attempts. So even us, taking risks and making mistakes in front of students, that makes it a safe space as we model. I love that. So thank you. Music. I love that. Yeah, clean music with good lyrics, but motivating. There's some research. I don't know if it's true. It's been more than 20 years since my daughter was a baby, like this Mozart for babies or Beethoven for, there's some sort of music that can calm students. And if you have those sort of routines, that's very effective because there's no fear if students know what to expect every time when they come into our classrooms. Last one is number 4, you're here. I love that. Teach where they are. Right. So we have probably, you have certain outcomes for your course. So maybe, for my student learning outcomes or what students should be able to do at the end of the course, maybe they're at a high level and my students might not be there. So I need to come down to their level to help bring them up, right? Or maybe I have some students who are pretty close to level. So differentiating the instruction as well is important. So number 4, you're here. That's why, you are already fulfilling this in part by doing professional development. There's always something new to learn. And even if, you look at these 4 and like you think, I do this, well, sharing with others, helping others. And I always pick up one new idea, especially from fellow participants when I engage in professional development. But maybe you take other classes. CalPro has a lot of offerings. CASAS has offerings. Alicia works for OTAN if you're interested in technology. We have 3 different professional development organizations that offer many things for free, like CalPro right here, right now. So thank you. So those are the main domains or groupings under which we can see all of the different competencies. Today, we're going to focus on domain 2, plans and delivers high quality evidence-based instruction. Okay, so let's jump in. So this domain addresses planning and delivering high quality evidence-based instruction. So I want to ask you, I'll look at that picture of that teacher. Why would we focus on this one first? Why not start with number 1, go to number 2, and then 3 and 4? Why do you think we might start with domain 2 first in this first webinar? Anybody have an idea? It's kind of it's not too difficult. It's kind of a no-brainer.
We gotta figure out how we're gonna teach it and what we're teaching before we figure out how we're gonna deliver it.
Yeah, exactly. This is about high quality evidence-based instruction. So if we want to be effective, we have to know what that means. Exactly. Thank you. So within this particular domain, there are 4 competencies. So when you see that 2.1, that means domain 2, competency 1. And so you see the first one is designs learner-centered instruction and classroom environments. Notice it doesn't say teacher-centered. Learner-centered is the key there. The second one is design standards-based instructional units and lesson plans. So we're going to talk about standards. We don't always know, maybe you know, but we'll talk about what standards exist and maybe you have specific standards for your subject area. Then we have competency 3, uses instructional techniques that are effective with adult learners. So, me standing above and lecturing for 2 or 3 hours, that's not really going to be effective. We all know that, so we'll talk a little bit about that. Next is designs instruction to build learners' technology and digital media literacy skills. So teachers, we have a lot to learn. Right? It's hard to keep up. Some of you probably, I noticed in Moodle, a couple of you said you were using AI to differentiate or create different levels of reading texts. So that is a great use. And then how are we going to help students? That's something they do need to learn about artificial intelligence tools, but there's no big plan rolled out yet. So we need to start first ourselves, right? And 2.5 is designs instruction to build learners higher order thinking, communication, and problem solving skills. Instead of just memorizing a bunch of facts and regurgitating for a test, actually applying and thinking about how it's relevant to their lives and how they're going to use that information in the future. So first, a little bit about that first competency of designing learner-centered instruction in classroom environments. So yes, there are times when we're teaching and we need to be front and center, of course. But in adult education, our students have expertise and background knowledge that maybe we don't have. And so that's why I just love my classes. I learn so much from my students, right? So what are some characteristics of teacher-centered versus student-centered learning environments? Well, in a teacher-centered classroom, the focus is on the instructor. So I think about how my university courses were, and my daughter is now at the university. She's in a lecture room with 200 students. The teacher does not know her name. She's a number, and she doesn't even really need to go to class. So, right, that's not what we do. In other words, in student-centered learning environment, the focus is on both. We all bring something to the table. So it's not just me filling up my students' minds with knowledge transmitted, but tapping into what they know as well. In a teacher-centered classroom, the instructor talks, students listen. Not sure that's the best way. Some students are definitely oral learners. They can listen and learn everything that way, but that's a minority, right? So in other words, in a student-centered classroom, we do provide direct instruction and we model, and then the students interact with us and other students with different pairing and grouping and sorts of activities like that. You've probably heard of the I do, we do, now you do kind of gradual release of control, right? Teacher-centered, what you just mentioned before is the students maybe are working alone. I think that they would probably have more pleasure interacting with their classmates, working in pairs and groups. Sometimes they do need to work alone. And, if you have learned about universal design and instruction, we should give students choices. So one thing I observed once is that a teacher had some group activities, but they said, if you prefer to just work alone, we have this table over here. Because we know that there are maybe some introverts or people with different learning preferences. So yeah. Okay, so a few other things. In a teacher-centered classroom, the teacher is the one who holds all the knowledge. I don't know how that's possible when students have their phones and they can verify anything themselves, right? And the teacher is the only one answering questions. What I love to see is when, I tried to do this myself, but I observe it a lot with other teachers and I love it, is when a student asks a question to the teacher, but the teacher then turns the question back over to the group. Because we know when you're teaching someone else something you have learned, when you can teach it, you know it. So having students be a resource for each other, whereas we're also clarifying, okay? But we don't have to be the center of attention all the time.
Those questions I love just go, I just answered that. Anybody.
I know, right?
Ones that I just answered, I'm like, did anybody just hear that? Did I just?
Yeah. Yeah. And then suddenly they wake up and like, oh, I better pay attention, right? Or I better learn to take notes or something. Yeah. Turning it over to the students is a great technique. And it just saves our energy too. We don't have to be, leading everything. In a teacher-centered classroom, the instructor chooses the topics. Now, some of you work in CTE, career and technical programs, and you have the topics laid out. This is what they need for the industry. So there's maybe not a lot of choice, maybe more choice in the activities that you do, right? But for some of us who teach basic skills, adults with disabilities, we get that kind of choice that, of topics that will interest us and our students. So, I work in a community college and we have to submit a syllabus within the first week of course of the, new term. And I used to plan out everything. But in some of my classes, like one in particular, that very first day, have a list of topics and ask students which ones interest you most. And then I turn in a syllabus that's been revised a bit, right? Because when students have some choice of the topics, there's research that shows when we give up some of the control and give some of the control to the students, they are more likely to be motivated and to persist. So if they're interested, then that's something they need to know and they want to know, right? So we can do that in some of our courses anyway. In a teacher-centered classroom, we're the ones evaluating. Well, yeah, sometimes we have to. If you're teaching in CTE, you have to evaluate for students to get the skills they need to enter that particular job. But we should also have students doing a lot of reflection on their own learning. That's called the metacognition, thinking about how they learned and what they did well and how they can improve. So exercising their metacognition while also giving timely, effective, and useful feedback, not just good job, but what you did well, what you still need to work on, and here are resources to continue learning and improving. So we do evaluate, but have students also evaluate. So unfortunately, most classrooms, right, are set up like the image on the left. All the desks are in a row. I feel like those little desks that we have at my school are just like for children. I really don't like them. They're all in a row and teacher, student kind of thing, right? With a teacher in the front. I'm the expert. When I teach in these sort of classrooms, I always like an hour early and I move the desks. And so they're into little groups. And if I accidentally leave the room, some of my students are very traditionalists and I come back in and they put the desks back in rows. That's what they're used to. I don't know if you've ever had that. But right now I have the privilege this evening when I go to my 6 o'clock class that we have tables. Isn't that more realistic for adults to be sitting at tables? I know when they're taking a test, we don't want them, looking at their classmates' papers and so on. But this is more centered where everyone is included, everyone is equal with the teacher as facilitator. So I don't know about you. Probably you're like me. Most of the classrooms are like the one on the left. But this is just a different way to think about teacher-centered and learner-centered instruction, right? So we are now on competency 2 of domain 2 and I have about 10 minutes, so I need to go a little faster, but to make sure we get through. This is design standards-based instructional units and lesson plans. So let me ask you, you can say yes or type yes in the chat. Are you familiar with Common Core? That's really K through 12, right? And so maybe some of you have worked in K through 12, and that was the impetus for the development of the college and career readiness standards. How many of you are familiar with that? You can type yes or say yes. It's okay if not. But I do recommend, CalPro has some offerings on these final 2. Okay, so the college and career readiness standards came out, but for those of us who are teaching ESL, English language learners, it was identified that the CCRS did not give enough language support. So I believe, if I remember correctly, it was like 2016 or so that the English language proficiency standards came out with specific language standards for students to meet as stepstones to get to the college and career readiness standards. So these all are about preparing students for what lie beyond our adult courses, right? So do you happen to know what standards your curriculum is based on? Anybody? You can type in the chat. Sometimes we don't. I mean, honestly, CCRS and ELPS. Okay, great. I'm glad to hear that. Common Core. Okay, great. Sometimes we just, if you asked me and I was a new teacher, I wouldn't have any clue. And so, yeah, I mean, sometimes we see a course outline or we're just handed a syllabus and we don't really know where all of this came from. But if you have a look at those, they do give some really guideposts for how we can prepare students. Do you have any idea how it was decided what should be taught either in your level, if you work in a program with multiple levels, like ABE or ESL, or in your particular course? A lot of us probably don't if we were not included in that decision making. Anybody there? Go ahead and share on the chat. Not any clear standards. You okay? Good. Okay. Geared towards CASA's competencies. Excellent. Okay, great. So I think, yeah, while we have these great standards, they really help to see, okay, to communicate with students what they need and that they are ready for the next level too. So they're helpful for us. Have a look at them if you're not familiar with them, but it sounds like a lot of you are using in your programs CCRS and ELPS. Okay. So those are great guideposts. And why is that? Why do we want to start with standards? Well, This competency 2.2, it identifies the importance of standards as the basis of classroom instruction so that we know that we're getting students to a certain level of knowledge and skills, right? So by designing instructional units and lesson plans around the standards, we can ensure that we are getting students the learning that they need to be successful. Standards are those guideposts, as I said, and they answer the question, what should students know and be able to do about various topics, such as reading informational texts. That's a big part of CCRS. Fiction is fun and great, but what are they going to do in CTE courses, as well as, college credit courses? They're going to need informational texts as well as in the workplace. Writing for a specific audience, not just for us, but creating a writing task where they have to write to their boss or they have to write to their kid's teacher or so on, right? And there's also math. So I don't recall that we have a whole lot of math teachers involved, maybe one in this particular course this time around. But, even if we teach ESL, we can incorporate some simple math like taking a recipe and doubling it, right? So measurement and data can be things that we sprinkle in as well. So to support students in meeting these standards, we provide our curricula aligned around learning objectives. So we start with the objective and we do that backward buildup of lesson planning. And teachers will know if students are making progress towards and reaching the standards through formative and summative assessment. Okay. Competency 3 uses instructional techniques that are effective with adult learners. So many techniques that are effective in K through 12 for kindergarten through high school students are also effective with our adult learners, definitely. But that's not always the case. So I've done trainings with some wonderful teachers before who came through K through 12, and I felt a little uncomfortable because it seemed like they were treating their adults as children. And so, I don't have to tell anyone here, I know that, but this competency emphasizes that teachers should use the techniques that have been shown to work with adults. So thinking about how would you want to be treated? Would you be happy, forced to sing a silly kid song? Okay, that sort of thing. So it asks teachers to be sensitive to who their students are and what works for these students. It's critical because sometimes, as I said, we get a large influx of people who are maybe in retirement, or they want an extra job, or they're making a shift. And for those of you who make that shift, I'm sure you're so happy to be teaching adult learners. They're wonderful. The shift from K through 12. And then, sometimes if they haven't had the training, they just assume that they can do the same sort of teaching that they did with kids. But that's not always the case. So how is instruction for adults or andragogy different from pedagogy? Well, let's go through some things here. Our adult learners need to know why. So if we're teaching something maybe abstract, I don't know, punctuation, and we don't tie it to their goals, their needs, relevance to their lives, it could be really boring and they could see that as not having a lot of value. So we always need to make that explicit connection about why we are teaching them what we're teaching, sorry. Different from kids, adults can be self-directed. We can give them a task and we don't need to be hovering over their shoulder every moment, right? So that is a benefit. I'm sure you've all really appreciate that when you're teaching adults. Adults have more experience. In my current class, I have folks that are doctors and lawyers and, oh my gosh, so many different career areas. I'm teaching ESL learners and I learned so much from them. So even if you're teaching a very low level, sort of course, maybe ESL or ABE first level, our students have life experiences that we can tap into and use in the classroom. And finally, you can probably imagine that adult motivations are different. They have high intrinsic motivation. They know that they need our courses to go to something higher to reach their goals. Whereas kids are, It's compulsory that they attend school. Our students make a choice. So we need to value their time and make sure that they're learning something new every day that they come to our classes. 2.4 is designs instruction to build learners' technology and digital media literacy skills. What do you think? You know, when we're teaching basic skills courses, is technology a basic skill? Yeah, it really is now. So I've been in my program before, and a long time ago, there was a teacher who said, I'm not going to use the computer lab time. They're not interested. I just thought, wow, you're missing something. If we're not going to teach our students technology, they can't wait to get to college or to a particular computer class. We need to start teaching them now. So what technology do you use in your classroom now? So I'm almost out of time. So if you could share in the chat. And then if you want to share in the chat, how do you define digital media literacy? Now we're building up even AI literacy. So what does that mean to you? So go ahead and share in the chat, please. I'll pause for just 1 second because we're like 1 minute out. Okay. So if anybody likes to share in the chat, thank you. Great. Okay. Yeah. Limited. Okay. Excellent. Sharing games. Exactly. Okay. Excellent. Games can be very motivating for students. Fun, retrieval practice, sharing information. Yeah. And so great. Thank you, Chaya. Like knowing what to post and not to post online, knowing how to evaluate something they see online as being authentic or not is going to be crucial coming up. Okay, 2.5 is designs instruction to build learners higher order thinking, communication, and problem solving. Now, some of you may be more familiar with Bloom's taxonomy. This is Webb's depth of knowledge. And so making sure that we use questioning techniques, texts, and different types of activities that go beyond just recall of information, but tapping into students' higher order thinking, that they have to extend their thinking, they have to use strategic thinking, critical thinking, and creativity too. Okay, so these are the 5 competencies. I'm not going to read them all just because we're running low on time. And you see them like this, but in reality, they might be better arranged like this. And why is that? Well, just to finish up, the 5 competencies build on each other and work together. To have learner-centered instruction in classroom environments, it's important that your instructional units and lesson plans be standards-based, and your instructional units and lesson plans need to include instructional techniques that are effective with adult learners. Instructional techniques that are effective with adult learners and are used within a learner-centered classroom environment will help us build learners' technology and digital media literacy skills. Instructions is designed to build those higher order thinking skills, communication, and problem solving skills are also a critical part of standards-based instruction. So they all are connected and they all work together. So as we finish up, in week 1, you've already done these different activities. If you haven't, we're not like super strict on deadlines, but please try to finish as timely as you can. And in week 2, should be done by Sunday, November 9th. There is a forum post and reply to a couple of discussions. I see somebody already jumped in and completed the adult education teacher competencies self-assessment. So there's that piece where you can see where you're strong and maybe areas of growth. And please mark on your calendar, webinar 2 will be in week 3, Thursday, November 13th from 3 to 4 p.m. We hope you can make it. And as we wrap up, are there any last questions? Okay, sorry I went a little long, get a little talkative, get excited, right? All right, thank you so much. Please reflect on everything that's covered. If you have any questions, please jump in Moodle, and we'll see you in Moodle, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today.